Well, now joining us here on A's Cast Live, he's the Executive Vice President of Baseball Operations. The great Billy Beane is back with us. Billy, it's been a while. How are you, and how's life with the family and everything?
Well, good. Well, as the family's going good, just like everybody else, kids just back in school. It seems like summers are getting shorter and shorter as I get older with the kids. But it's been a challenging year on the diamond, as you know. You've been there every night for us, Chris. So some good things and some things not so good. But I think going into the season, we had some expectations that there was going to be some bumps along the road, but starting to see some good things, which is good. And listen, it's this is the trials and tribulations of putting together a team, and we've done it before, so we'll get it on the right track.
Yeah, I said this with David Forst on the David Forst Show. If there's anything, you guys got street cred. You've done this so many times that no one's sitting here flipping out going, oh, my God, we could be bad for 20 years like the Pirates were. I mean, you guys got that street cred where you've done this before. But the great thing about today's interview is we're not talking about baseball right now. We're talking about one of your favorite seasons, one of your favorite teams, a lot of people that you absolutely love. We're celebrating the 2002 Oakland Athletics. Of course, the book, the movie, all of that. But I want to get into the actual team and what that season was like, what baseball was like, and where you were in your career at that point. So when we look back, what was baseball like in 2002 for the Athletics, for you, which is so far different than where we are now?
Well, a lot less gray hair. I'll tell you what, it was such an intense time for the organization, myself personally. I mean, every day, again, and part of it was youth. I was a very young guy. It was David was even younger. I think that was David's third year with us. His first year is 2000. So he was very young in his career. Paul DePodesta was still here. The old gang was all together. And again, 20 years, it does seem like a long time ago. I mean, 20 years is a long time. I still have incredible memories. The one thing about, obviously, the elephant in the room is that was the year that, Michael used to write the book. And in some sense, that team will always sort of continue to live on in the memory of, not just A's fans, but even people who weren't necessarily A's fans, because the book, even to this day, credit to Michael, continues to have fans and readers, not just in the States, but around the world. It's funny. I was on the phone call from a gentleman who he was in Mallorca, Spain. He lives in London. He's Italian. And we were talking, and I explained, I said, hey, I've got to get off. I'm doing an interview. And he goes, and he knew all about the team. He knew all about the book, despite the fact that he grew up in Italy. Again, you're never going to forget. I won't. This team will always sort of go down, and historically, because of so many things, not just the streak. But what's interesting, and the one thing, and before we were getting ready to speak, Chris, I sort of had to think about myself, like, what's the thing that I remember most about the streak, not just the year, but the streak. All I remember was we won 20 games in a row and barely moved the needle on the Angels behind us. Which, you asked me the question about, where was I in my career? I mean, I didn't relax for one day, because we won 20 games, and the idea that you could win 20 straight games and maybe not win the division was very much a possibility, because the Angels were so good and were almost nearly as hot as we were at that time. And so you never really got to enjoy every single win, because there was just so much need to win every game, because the Angels were right on your rear end. As everybody knows, that team was very good, and they went on to win the World Championship. That's how good they were. So the 20 games, you think 20 games, you'd be in a great mood for 20 days, but you were just really on the edge of your seat, because you're looking over your shoulder the whole time. The other thing I remember about the streak, and we could talk about the whole season and some of the players, but I knew I almost knew 100%. I say that, but when it was going to end. We had some miraculous finishes I think Miggy had a game-winning hit, I think, on a day game against Kansas City. In fact, a couple of games in that series. Obviously, Hattie's home run in the 20th game. And I think the Twins, I believe I think Miggy did Miggy hit a homer against the Twins maybe in the weekend before. We were just having just incredible comebacks. But I remember I think we won on a Wednesday. I believe the 20th game was on a Wednesday. And I think we had an off day on a Thursday, and we were traveling, and we played Minnesota. And at that time, Minnesota was A, good, B, the Metrodome was arguably one of the toughest places in sports to play at that time, playing in the Metrodome. And I think Radke was pitching against us. I think it was Brad Radke. I'm pretty sure that was the matchup. I'm not completely sure. But you just knew, like, wow, this is going to be really tough to beat these guys. We were sort of a little mentally exhausted from it. I say we, because I was too. But you kind of knew that was going to be the night, and it was. But that team, I'm really looking forward to this weekend. You know, as many years as I've been here, we have a lot of, you know, weekend events with some of the, teams of the past, which are wonderful. But I think of all the ones we've had, this is one that I'm looking forward to, because I really love those guys in that team. And I sort of look back, and, you talk about where I was in my career. Now when I walk in the locker room, I'm definitely a lot older than everybody in there. So, and I start thinking about the group now, and I was not that far. Some of the guys were older than I was. We had guys in that team. I remember I was looking the other day on Doug Jones, the late Doug Jones, unfortunately. And when I was the general manager, he was quite a few years older than me. Like,
you were in better shape than some of those guys on the team.
You know what? I think I worked out more than them. Mainly, that was sort of my stress relief. Was during the games. It's sort of common knowledge that I would work out during the game. And in fact, the 20th game, I must have put in 6 miles in the treadmill, and we were still only in the 4th inning, so I had a lot of energy still left in me. But yeah, looking back, I was not that much older than a lot of the guys. So there was really I had a real strong relationship with a number of the players. And particularly Hattie, Scott, who I'm still friends with. He works for us now. We actually, so we're, very close. And I look back, they're really a good bunch of guys. And, beyond being good baseball players. And the other thing, too, is that, that was the team that was coming off. The 01 team was an amazing team. I still think the 2001 team, in my opinion, is the best team from pure just talent and balance that I've ever had since I've been here over the years. And I really thought it was a team that was deserving of a title. To me, it's one of those teams, like, you look at the Indians of the 90s that were one of the best teams for a long time that never won a title. I think that 2001 team sort of fits in that category. Because they didn't win the title, nobody talked about them. Fast forward to 2002, I remember when we got beaten 2001, the night we got home about 3 a.m, and me and Paul DePodesta were watching everybody unload their bags at 3 a.m. after a tough loss to the Yankees in game 5. And I remember looking at Paul and just saying, and knowing that Johnny Damon was going to be gone, Jason was going to be gone, Jambi Isringhausen was going to be gone. And I just go, wow, we may never see a team like this. So we were starting 02 a little bit personnel-wise in this huge hole. I mean, you win 101 games. I think it was 102 or 101 games. And you lose star players, MVP caliber players. Izzy was one of the best relievers in the game. Johnny Damon, enough said. And so going into that season, there was so many people who expected, just a huge drop off. And for them, I think we ended up winning one more game when it was all said and done. And we also, I think, and that was the year we also started pretty slow too, if you recall. Yeah. We had a really slow start. And
in June, actually, I think it was June. I mean, now you can kind of see why you guys had that streak of 20 games, because it was like in June you rolled off something like 15 out of 16 or 16 out of 17. So you'd had a streak before earlier in the season too that got you back from that slow start.
Yeah, and if you recall, that was also the time and again, I'm see if my memory's correct. We had a slow start, but we knew internally the team was good. It was just still a small sample size, but we knew with some of the stuff, the analytics that we're using, that our team was actually good. We just had some bad luck. That being said, we know in sports, no one sort of buys, when the guy, hey, we're a good team, but we got a bad record. You just got to believe us, right? It doesn't fly. It doesn't fly with you. It doesn't fly with anybody. And I think we got back from Toronto and we were at our sort of low point, but we knew we were a good team. I mean, Paul and I knew like, hey, this is a good team. We're going to be fine. But it was also when we came back was when we had, I think it was like a Black Monday where we made all these changes, we moved guys out. And there was this belief that we had sort of created, by virtue of our moves in the front office, that we had sort of made all the right moves that corrected the team. When in reality, we knew we were good. We sort of, the moves we made were more on the fringe, It really didn't affect the core of the team, but because there was a number of moves on that day, there was this idea that we made these genius moves. And in fact, the team was just really good. It just needed to be left alone. And the moves we made were more sort of window dressing and looked good from the outside because the team started playing well, but it wasn't necessarily a result of those moves. That being said, I do think one of the guys we brought in on that day, we brought into the team, we brought in John Mabry, I think was part of that because I think Jeremy left to Philly and I think Mabry came in. I want to say that was about the same time, and John was incredible for us. I mean, John had, game-winning hits and really just took off as soon as he got here and gave us a real jolt. So, but in reality, the team was really good, and us leaving it alone, probably we would have still had a really good season and probably won the division.
Yeah, we just had John on when he came in with Kansas City on the coaching staff and talked about, this was like the greatest year of my career, and like, it was a special time, and we're holding out hope. We know it may be a possibility that Miguel Tejada could show up for this celebration. And as you mentioned, you lost your primetime guy in Jason Giambi, an MVP, and we know what he meant to this franchise. Little did we know in spring training at that point that Miguel Tejada was about to become a national primetime guy and be an MVP. And he hasn't been back since. I really hope we get to see him and he shows up because he deserves his due as an Oakland Athletic, and I'm sure you agree.
Oh, well, I mean, it was funny. I got a message from Miggy not too long. It was a couple of months. He sent me a note, and I had heard from him in years, so it was nice to communicate with him because, like everybody, every fan, what you saw on the field with Miguel, the personality was exactly the guy that was in the clubhouse. He just was such a good guy, a tremendous talent too. Really a tremendous talent. And so I'm going to be looking forward to seeing him as well. And it was good to see that he's coming out. And I know Huddy will be out here. Hattie will be out here. Mulder. I think I saw Mark Mulder come out here. I think Terrence Long is going to be it's a really good turnout. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing these guys too. I just saw Ramon. Actually, it was in the clubhouse about a month ago, and Elvis Andrus. I walked by Elvis Andrus, and he was on a FaceTime at the time with Ramon Hernandez, who, like Elvis, is from Venezuela. And so he stopped me. He goes, "Hey, here's one of your friends," and I spoke to Ramon, who I believe is managing in Mexico, I believe right now, as a manager there. And it was good to talk to Ramon. I saw him here one time too, and it was funny, because you want to talk about the O2 team. I remember Ramon. Ramon, just such a mentally tough. Of all the players here, he was one of the most mentally tough kids we had here. I mean, he really, again, people, forget it. He was a really good player, good offensive catcher, good defensive catcher. And it's funny, I sort of, one of the things I was always a proponent of, and was I never liked collisions at the plate with catchers. I just thought it was just a play that didn't need to happen. I've always thought that. And the Posey, injuries, certainly I thought prompted rule changes that I think have been good to the game. That's my opinion. I don't buy into this like a catcher sitting there waiting for somebody to clean his clock is a good idea.
Yeah, the old Mike Scioscia sitting there blocking the plate well before the ball ever got there.
I just don't. Again, I just think these are vulnerable positions. Now the catcher has gear on, and sometimes, but still, I just don't think it's a great play. And I was always a proponent of the rule changes that we have now. I think it's been great. And since they've put them in, you don't see those kind of injury-causing collisions. And so the reason I tell this story was Ramon, who was a physically tough guy. And I remember we lost a game in Kansas City. It was a crazy game, and I can't remember the year. It might have been '01. I don't know. I think it was '02. And it was like a 15-14. It was one of those crazy games. Mick, at the end of the day, Ramon, there was a play at the plate. Kansas City scored, and there was this thought that maybe he could have blocked the plate to save the run and win. And I remember going to Ramon and going, I don't ever want you blocking the plate. I said, I'd rather lose one game than lose you for 2 weeks. And that was my belief. And, because he certainly was tough enough. I don't think necessarily, blocking the plate is necessarily a very pragmatic idea with one of the most important positions on the field. And that was the message I used to give when Kurt Suzuki came over. I told Kurt, because he was here when the rule change happened. I said, Kurt, I don't want you sacrificing your body for one run. I need you for the whole year, and I'm willing to give up that run or that game for you to stay healthy. And again, I think the game has evolved. But the reason I remember Ramon is that Ramon caught a little grief, from I think not the general public, but just people like, why didn't you throw your whole body there? And to me, it just wasn't a good idea. And I remember saying, don't ever do that. I'm fine with you not blocking the plate and getting hurt for one run. I want you healthy. And because he was certainly tough enough. And again, my point of saying this is that not only was he physically tough, but he's mentally tough. He's one player I remember I could literally go up to after a game. We used to have this little wager with each wager. It wasn't actually a wager. It was more like kind of a fun game where, when he was a really good hitter was when he went to right field. So I told him every time he pulled the ball, I was gonna get on him, and every time he went the other way, he was gonna sort of win that event. And you could really sort of put this kind of pressure on him, and he really responded too. And again, people, it's been a long time since Ramon's been here, but he was a real important part of that team and a part of that group of players that was around for a couple of years.
And you think about your pitching, the only way you're going to have these streaks is not only do you have to have the arms, but they got to get hot together. And Hudson Mulder Zito and then Corey Lytle. I mean, so sad about Corey, but remembering him, I mean, nobody was hotter in the game during that streak than Corey Lytle.
Corey was unbelievable. And it was so satisfying, I think, for a front office because we really Corey came over in the Johnny I think it was a Johnny Damon Mark Ellis deal was that and we really wanted him, and one of the reasons I wanted him, I was a little bit obsessed with getting him. He was kind of a middle reliever, up and down guy with Tampa, but I recall, and I think it was 2000, we had a game in September when Tampa came in, and we needed every single win, as you know, because we won it on the last day, and Tampa was a team at that time we should have beaten. And I think he came in, it was in Oakland. The game was in Oakland, and he shut us out. And I never forgot that game. And it was like that from that moment on, I was kind of obsessed with getting a guy who seemed to be very underrated. And we were able to include him. In fact, he was the guy that we were insisting on to complete the Damon Ben Grieve deal, which was, I think it was after '01. It was after 2000. I'm sorry. And so to see him sort of blossom the way he did as a starter with us, when that was always the plan, was to put him in the rotation, was really satisfying to everybody, because when he got on a roll, he was really good. Good running, kind of a good running fastball, sinker, a really good split finger, and really, again, about Corey, he had this sort of self-confidence about him. I mean, he was afraid of no one when it came to playing the game of baseball, and he was really, when he got on a roll, he was tough. And he was, as you said, he was critical in that streak. That's why the streak happened. We were able to just throw out a starter out there every game, beyond our offense and defense. And just that starter could shut you down. And that's a pretty powerful thing in this game.
Yeah, and you had to replace, as you mentioned, Isringhausen moves on. You got Billy Koch. And then we were talking with Ken Korak about it the other day. It's like he threw every game.
Yeah, and Billy also had this sort of like energy to him, which really worked well with our team too in the crowd. Billy was kind of a high energy guy on and off the field, and it worked really, really well here. And as I sort of kid even now, when we brought Billy in, I mean, we gave up a pretty good young player at the time. It was Hinsky, I think, went over that deal, and I think Eric ended up being rookie of the year. So thank goodness Billy did have the year. And then at the end of that year, I think we flipped Billy for Keith Folk, and Keith came over and had a couple good runs for us as the closer.
Yeah, pitching, it's amazing. I mean, I know you can build for it and draft it. And today, now with Tommy John surgery, I know you've said in the past, if someone could figure out how to prevent Tommy John surgery, they'd be a billionaire. But what you had with health and stability there in the rotation is just something you pray for as a general manager.
Yeah, and it helped that we were young. It was a young team that stayed healthy. And if you look at that team, not only just the 02 team, but also the 01 team, they were, really starting to hit their prime when they were with us, which was why it was so much fun and why we were so good. But if you look at how long the careers of a lot of those guys went after that, it's really a testament to how much talent was actually there. I mean, those guys went on to play a long time, Miggy in Baltimore, Huddy in Atlanta, Jason played for a long time, as we know. And it was a team that had staying power beyond, the 02 season as well. Even Hattie went on a number of years after that. Ramon, again, these guys kept going on, and which is always the thing, if you have any sort of regrets, I say regrets, or things you could wish for, is when you imagine, you talk about how different I was. Imagine, my first year was 98 as the gym, and then all of a sudden 1999 and 2000, we start to create this team. And imagine in a world where you could have kept those guys their entire career. I mean, for the next decade, we might be having this conversation, every year with that group, on what they did. That's the thing that's disappointing. That's what I've always said was, the tough thing about the last 25 years or so is creating something and not really being able to sort of retain it for a number of years to really see how good it can be. We've constantly had to turn over a bit, and as you know, that's a challenge, but you also don't get to see potentially what could be some great years ahead.
The one thing, though, that you do create, and I find it so fascinating whether the players are done and they come back and we have them on, or they're players that are still playing today, what does it mean to you that all these years, these players play for the A's, they move on, they play in other places, have other experiences, but they all seem to say the same thing, that this time in Oakland was the best time of their careers? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's a real credit to the culture that has been around the organization, particularly in the baseball operations, which we've had a lot of stability. We kind of let guys just kind of be themselves over here. You kind of, Chris, you and I remember growing up in a weird way. It was a little bit like, if you remember the Oakland Raiders. I mean, they bring in these players and they had this sort of Raider culture that let guys, Ted Hendricks and let Kenny Stabler. I know I'm going back.
Albedo.
Yeah, they sort of just let them be themselves, and we're kind of the same way a little bit. And maybe it's just that's Oakland. It's part of living here, and I think that helped a lot. I think a lot of the managers have set the tone over the years too, which helps a lot. Obviously, we had Bob for a decade, and I mean, as well as anybody, Bob's about as competent and as good a guy to play for as you're going to find in baseball. Art was the same way. The players genuinely really liked him. He didn't have a lot of rules. He let guys sort of be themselves, and in the front office, we listen, just we weren't. We didn't have, dress codes. We didn't have strict rules. We expected them to be responsible, and they handled themselves well. I mean, there was times, trust me, where I had to put my hands over my ears, because we had the team, this group we're down. This was a really young, talented team, and they were a lot of fun. And so, but they handled themselves like professionals in the same sense too. We if you really look back, we didn't really have too many problems that I can recall, which is a testament to what kind of character the players were. But again, I think the culture and the environment sort of allowed them to be themselves and helped create what ended up being memorable beers for a lot of people. And the great thing for me is I got to live every one of them because I feel the same way, And I remember over the years when we've talked to players, when the team is good, and everyone knows, listen, our fans, you still hear people talk, you hear Tigers, Verlander still talks about when this team is good and deserving of having big crowds, which that's our responsibility. The crowds will come when you're good. I mean, our stadium is one of the toughest stadiums to play in sports, and you've heard great players say that. I mean, I've heard Verlander say a number of times. I've heard other players talk about they hated coming into the stadium when this team was good because of the fan support and just the excitement that this place had. I say this place, I've been in the Coliseum. So, but a good group, and again, it is a great. Going back to the things, I remember as a visiting player with the Twins. I mean, I obviously wasn't a very good player, which made it even worse. So the day or two that I played, I remember I played for Kirby Puckett, and we had a doubleheader back in the '80s, and I played for Kirby one game, and the idea that I would be subbing for Kirby Puckett just left me open for 9 innings of abuse from all the bleacher fans out there. I couldn't wait for that game to get over. But again, the culture and all that culture wasn't just about the clubhouse, the players. It was really about everything, everything in Oakland, even up to the people you and I know, Chris. I mean, the security guards that you and I have known for years, the same people which was kind of cool. And Z. I mean, listen, Mike Zagaris, our team photographer, is part of that culture. Everybody knows Z. And so that creates a situation, which again, what you talk about, where we've had great teams, a lot of fun, and a great environment.
Well, what I've heard is that the intimidation factor was always when teams showed up to the Coliseum and Eck is outside running in dolphin shorts with no shirt on. Then they come into the stadium. You and Sandy are running around without shirts. I mean, that really was that's what scared everybody coming to the Coliseum.
We did do that. You know what? It's so funny you mentioned that. You probably, that was in my salad eating days, Chris. Yeah, I remember that we would go out there, especially this time of year. You go out there in Oakland, it's about 75. Get out there early, just a little bit after lunch. It was also an era when you and I both grew up in San Diego when sunscreen was not. You never heard the word sunscreen, right? So
baby oil.
Yeah, baby, or zinc oxide on the nose, and that's it. So yeah, we probably could have been a little better with as I'm every multiple times a year as a dermatologist will tell you, I'm paying for those days. But yeah, you're right. And as far as that, in '89 when I was here, he it's hard to imagine, but he would run down Hagenberger Road and all around the Coliseum at 2:30 in the afternoon in his shorts and no shirts. And Eck literally may be one of the most recognizable athletes of his time, for so many reasons. So it always kind of blows me away when I think about that he did do that and didn't even consider doing anything else.
Let's end on this. And of course, we always appreciate the time. I think about the continuity. I think about the loyalty. As you mentioned, just the people that work at the Coliseum, the people, all my years doing Raiders, all my years doing Warriors, and then, of course, all the years doing A's, you get to know these people. And I just think about, we just honored Keith Lippman, 52 years, Steve Vucinich, 54 years. You just start thinking about everybody around you, David Forst, Billy O. You think about Kubota, you think about Pam Pitts. I mean, you think about everybody. What has it been since you took over and you became the general manager? For you, it's been about that continuity and that loyalty inside this organization, because you really don't see that anywhere else in sports.
Yeah, and I think that's what's made it special for us, particularly, even the baseball ops. We've gone through a number of ownership changes during that time. I've had the Haas family, Steve Schott and Ken Hoffman. Lou was the managing partner. John Fisher's taken over. So it's unusual to have that kind of continuity in any industry, and particularly this one, is particularly when you have ownership changes. So I think that's part of, actually, I didn't say what's part of, I think that's what has made at least for me, the organization's so special. Even yourself, Chris. I mean, you sort of leave yourself out of this. You and I sort of go back to you doing a Sunday show back in 90, gosh, what was it, 94, 90, I don't know how long ago
96,
it was.
97.
96, 97. Yeah, I remember talking to you on a Sunday, the prime role, right? That you had that prime slot on a Sunday at what time when nobody was listening, right? And nobody's listening to you or I, but I mean, in some sense, you're part of that too. And, you know, I don't know if it's good or bad, but I love having the familiarity. You know, I mentioned, you know, Mr. Dobbins, our longtime security, you know, who's handled the security at the door of the clubhouse, who you've known for so many years, guys like that, and guys like Z and the, you know, even the people, you know, the parking lot, you know, Eric, our security guard at the Coliseum. I mean, Eric is like Benjamin Button. I always kid him. He looks younger every single year I see him. You know, Ray and Roy, you know, these are sort of guys we've known, you know, you know, guys that the public doesn't know, but are part of our history and that continuity as well. You know, not just the baseball ops people, but the security, you know, the people, again, the security, the photographers. Again, it's what I think has made the A special all around, and special certainly for me.
Well, thank you so much for the time. This is going to be a great weekend for A's fans because this era of A's baseball, they absolutely love it. They love these guys. These guys should get their due. They're a special group. So enjoy it. Soak it all up. It was a wonderful time. It'll never be forgotten in baseball history. And you guys, I think we'll all have a good time getting back together and remembering the good old days.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun weekend, Chris, and we'll look forward to seeing you out there and everybody else as well.